For many of us, it was a childhood rite of passage. Sprawled on a bedroom floor, we commanded armies of plastic figures, creating epic battles between the spike-tailed Stegosaurus and the fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex. Dinosaurs were our first encounter with true monsters, yet they were safely confined to the past, monolithic titans of a world lost to time. They were magnificent, terrifying, and above all, gone. But what if they weren't? What if the single cataclysmic event that ended their reign never happened? Imagine for a moment a chunk of rock and ice 6 miles wide, a cosmic messenger of doom hurtling through space. 66 million years ago, it struck the Yucatan Peninsula with the force of billions of atomic bombs, rewriting the future of life on Earth. But what if, by some minuscule shift in trajectory, some cosmic nudge, it had missed? What if that world, the age of reptiles, never vanished in a cloud of fire and ash? This is not merely a flight of fancy or a premise for a monster movie. It is a thought experiment, a scientific simulation grounded in the principles of paleontology, evolutionary biology, and geology. By erasing that one moment of impact from the timeline, we can attempt to paint a plausible, science-based portrait of a planet where the age of dinosaurs never ended and ask the ultimate question: in a world they never left, would there have ever been room for us? To truly understand the world that could have been, we must first immerse ourselves in the world that was, just moments before its annihilation. The late Cretaceous period was not a primitive or failing ecosystem. It was a planet at a different stage of its life, a sweltering, hothouse world. The air was thick with humidity, heavy with oxygen, and carried the scent of damp earth and strange, unfamiliar blossoms. The great continental plates were still drifting toward their modern positions, and the oceans swelled, swallowing coastlines we know today. There were no polar ice caps. Instead, the poles were lush and green, home to unique species of dinosaurs adapted to months of seasonal darkness. The dominant flora consisted of vast forests of ferns, cycads, and ancient conifers. One crucial element of our modern landscape was conspicuously absent. There were no Great Plains, no rolling grasslands, because grass had yet to evolve into a major ecological force. Into this world, the dinosaurs had radiated for over 150 million years, filling nearly every conceivable ecological niche. They were not a dynasty in decline. They were at the zenith of their power and diversity. The Tyrannosaurus rex was not a clumsy, slow-moving scavenger. It was a marvel of predatory engineering, a 7-ton apex predator with a bone-shattering bite, keen senses, and a surprisingly agile gait for its size. The plains and forests were home to vast, continent-spanning herds of hadrosaurs, the so-called duck-billed dinosaurs, and the formidable shield-headed ceratopsians like triceratops, which moved in numbers that would have dwarfed the great buffalo herds of a bygone American prairie. The skies were not ruled by birds, but by the pterosaurs, leathery-winged reptiles that reached terrifying sizes, such as the Quetzalcoatlus, which boasted the wingspan of a small airplane. This was the world on the eve of destruction, a complex, stable, and thriving ecosystem dominated by the most successful group of vertebrates in the planet's history. Now, let us perform our simulation. The Chicxulub impactor, that agent of global change, does not strike. It simply sails on by, a silent threat in the cosmic dark that passes unnoticed. Consequently, the sky did not turn to fire. The global tsunami never washed across the continents. The long, dark nuclear winter, caused by sun-blocking debris, never came. The day after that fateful near miss dawned just like the one before, with a Cretaceous sun rising over a world of reptilian giants. The Great Extinction was canceled. But a world spared from sudden catastrophe is not a world frozen in time. The planet itself is a dynamic engine of change, and the geological clock would have continued to tick. Without the Chicxulub impact, Earth would have still drifted into the Cenozoic era, and with it, a long, slow global cooling and drying trend that was already subtly underway. Volcanoes would have still rumbled, continents would have continued their slow-motion collision, and mountain ranges would have risen, altering weather patterns across the globe. This gradual environmental shift would have presented the dinosaurs with a new, protracted evolutionary challenge. The warm, humid forests of the Cretaceous would begin to recede, giving way to more open woodlands and eventually vast, arid landscapes. And it is here that a humble yet revolutionary botanical upstart would begin its global conquest: grass. For the giant herbivorous dinosaurs, whose physiology was tailored to browsing on soft ferns and cycads, the rise of grass would have been an evolutionary gauntlet. Grass is tough, full of abrasive silica that wears down teeth, and its low-lying profile requires a different feeding strategy than nibbling on leaves. Many dinosaur lineages would have likely faltered and gone extinct in the face of this new food source, but evolution is relentless. Just as mammals later evolved into specialized grazers like horses and bison, so too would some dinosaurs have adapted. The most likely candidates are the hadrosaurs and the ceratopsians. These groups already possess some of the most complex dental hardware of their time, with hundreds of teeth arranged into grinding batteries. Over millions of years, these dental batteries would have been honed to perfection for cropping and processing tough, gritty grasses. We can imagine a world where the vast savannas are not populated by wildebeest and zebra, but by herds of sleeker, more gracile descendants of triceratops or new forms of hadrosaurs adapted for life on the plains. The age of dinosaurs would simply have entered a new chapter, the age of grazing dinosaurs. And what of our ancestors, the mammals? During the Cretaceous, they were small, nocturnal, and secretive, scurrying through the undergrowth like shrews and opossums. They lived in the shadows of the giants, their evolutionary potential suppressed by a world where every major ecological niche was already filled. And in a world where the dinosaurs never left, that is where they would have stayed. The evolutionary vacuum that allowed mammals to explode in diversity, the age of mammals that followed the extinction, would never have opened. There would be no evolutionary path for large herbivores, because the dino grazers would have that covered. There would be no room for large predators because the tyrannosaurids and their kin would continue to evolve and dominate that role. There would be no elephants, no tigers, no whales, no bears. And most critically for our own story, there would have been no primates. The lineage that led to monkeys, apes, and ultimately humans could only begin its ascent in a world scrubbed clean of its reptilian overlords. In this alternate timeline, our mammalian ancestors would remain forever locked in the shadows, a footnote in a story that was never about them. Our very existence, it turns out, is a direct consequence of their absence. The question of our own non-existence leads inevitably to another, more alien query. If not us, then who? Is intelligence of our kind tool-using, culture-building, self-aware intelligence an exclusive privilege of the mammalian brain? Or is it a potential outcome for any lineage given the right combination of evolutionary pressures and anatomical gifts? If we scan the roster of late Cretaceous dinosaurs, one group stands out as a tantalizing candidate for the planet's next intelligent ruler. They weren't the colossal sauropods or the hulking tyrants. They were a family of smaller, nimble theropods known as the troodontids. Creatures like Troodon and Stenonychosaurus were light bipedal predators, perhaps only the size of a large turkey, but they possessed a startling set of characteristics. Relative to their body size, they had the largest brains of any known non-avian dinosaur, an anatomical metric known as the encephalization quotient, or EQ. A high EQ isn't a guarantee of intelligence, but it is a strong prerequisite. Their skulls housed large optic lobes, suggesting keen eyesight, and their eyes were large and forward-facing, granting them stereoscopic vision, the ability to perceive depth, a critical tool for any hunter, and later, for any tool user. Perhaps most importantly, their forelimbs were long and grasping. While not as dexterous as a human hand, their three-fingered claws could have manipulated objects, held onto struggling prey, and perhaps, with a few million more years of refinement, done much more. They were already on a promising path. In our dinosaur-dominated Cenozoic, these creatures would have faced new selective pressures. As the climate changed and new types of prey evolved on the expanding savannas, cunning and cooperation would become more valuable than ever. The troodontids were likely already social pack hunters, and the need for more complex hunting strategies would drive the evolution of better communication and social structures. Over the eons, this could have created a positive feedback loop. A smarter brain allows for better tool use and social planning, which in turn creates a more complex environment that selects for an even smarter brain. Their very anatomy would have shaped the nature of their ascent. To free up their hands for full-time manipulation, their posture might have become more upright, with their long, stiff tails serving as a dynamic counterbalance. These beings, let's call them dinosauroids, would not be scaly humans. they would be something profoundly different, an intelligence forged in a reptilian mold. Imagine a creature standing roughly 5 feet tall, its body covered not in bare scales, but perhaps in a coat of advanced insulative proto-feathers, a legacy of its theropod ancestry. Its head would be dominated by large, luminous, bird-like eyes, unblinking and analytical. Its movements would be swift and precise, a predator's grace hardwired into its nervous system. Their intelligence would likely carry a different flavor from our own. Born from a lineage of hunters, their minds might be less given to abstract empathy and more to spatial reasoning, strategic planning, and a deep, instinctual understanding of physics and biology, the core skills for tracking, trapping, and surviving. Their first tools might not have been for art or ritual, but for more efficient butchery or the construction of sophisticated traps. Their civilization, if it ever arose, would be a reflection of its creators, pragmatic, keenly observant, and forever retaining the soul of a hyper-intelligent predator. As we stand back and survey this alternate Earth, we see a planet that is at once familiar and breathtakingly alien. It is a world where the thundering footfalls of giant herbivores still echo across vast grasslands, their forms honed by 66 million more years of evolution. It is a world where the apex predators are not lions or bears, but the sleek, intelligent descendants of the great carnosaurs, perhaps even more terrifying than their ancestors. It is a world where the night is still owned by our timid mammalian relatives who never got their chance to inherit the earth. And somewhere, perhaps in fledgling communities nestled in river valleys or on coastal plains, the dinosauroids are taking their first steps. They might be chipping at flint, weaving nets from plant fibers, or developing a complex vocal language of chirps, clicks, and whistles to coordinate their hunts and build their society. The very notion of our own existence becomes a casualty of this timeline. The story of humanity is not an inevitable epic, the grand climax of planetary evolution. Instead, it is a staggering contingency, the result of a cosmic roll of the dice. Our intelligence, our art, our music, our cities, our philosophical questions about our own place in the universe, all of it is predicated on a planetary catastrophe. The Chicxulub impact was the single greatest tragedy for the dinosaurs, an abrupt and violent end to their glorious 150 million year reign. But for our furtive, shrew-like ancestors, that fiery rock from the heavens was not an apocalypse, it was a golden ticket. It was the moment the cage door swung open, clearing the stage for a new kind of protagonist to emerge from the wings. And so, we are left with a profound and humbling thought. The world we know, the face we see in the mirror, the entire tapestry of human history and achievement, is built upon the ashes of a world we can now only imagine. The next time you look up at the night sky, at the countless stars and the silent void between them, perhaps spare a moment of strange gratitude for a long-lost asteroid. We are here because it was there. Its random, violent arrival cleared the path, allowing a completely different kind of life to blossom in the ruins of the last. We are, in the most literal sense, the children of a cosmic accident.